Speaking as an American, one of the most delightful things about being at this conference for me is seeing the internationalism of everyone here. We understand that we're not conscripted into our nation state of birth or citizenship, but that as human beings we have the right to participate in the full globe of economic activities. And to me that's really important because nationalism is on the rise in Europe, in the US, all over the world as a kind of alleged replacement to social democracy. But actually it's not a replacement, it's just another flavor of the same form of statism. So it thrills me to be around such an international crowd. It's just fantastic. Our next presenter has spent a lifetime developing his talents and techniques and living free as a permanent tourist. He's an accomplished author, educator, and global entrepreneur whose main purpose in life is to spread truth and freedom by sharing the many practical applications of his acquired knowledge and experience. With a strong background in international business and finance, his specialty is in creating rock-solid financial privacy and asset protection systems that can be used to support people who want to learn how to escape the matrix. He's the founder of the Lighthouse Law Club and the Monaco Management Group. Please help me welcome Mark Emery.
Thank you, everybody. Wow. Hola. Hello. Bonjour, welcome and bienvenido. And as they say in some parts up north, howdy y'all. Wow, I hope you folks are half as excited as I am about what's going on here. This presentation is going to be quite a bit different than what you've seen so far. And my intention is that you will leave here scratching your head thinking, wow, is that really possible? Is he just BSing me? I got to check into this. Because as you know, and you've heard many times before, that just about everything that we've been told most of our lives, been taught, grown up with, is basically a lie. And I think most of you understand that. Okay, so we're going to dig into some things. I'm going to plant some seeds. I only have 30 minutes. I can barely do a decent introduction in that time. But I want to plant some seeds with you and give you plenty of follow-up thereafter to really start digging in to some really fascinating subject matter, if you so choose. Okay? So, yes, I am Mark Emery. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. All right? You're not going to change my mind. That's more than just a poor effort at offhanded humor. There's really a story behind that. And I'll share it with you just in the sense of full disclosure, okay? Mark Emery is the name my parents gave me. And no, I'm not related to the Pot King in Canada. Two different people, all right? Although there probably was a time in high school when we may have been competing for that title, but no more. Okay. I spent a year in prison for using my name. And today, it's a joke where this happened in Colorado. You know, I was basically thrown in jail for criminally impersonating myself. True. It's a true story. And I know you're wondering, well, how the heck does that happen? Well, that happens when you become enough of a disruptor to the local political and business machine that they got to find some way to silence you, right? So we all know about being a political target. Very interesting story. I got so many stories. You know, I remember as a kid, my grandfather had a pharmacy in Chicago, and he started that in the early 1900s and went through all the Al Capone days, and he had so many wonderful stories. And my family would often say, you know, we got to record these stories before he goes on. And I've had so many stories as a disruptor, so many fun things that I figured I've got to find a way to, you know, pass this on when I'm not here any longer. So I've written a couple books, and I hope you have a chance to to deal with those or dig into those, because you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn an awful lot. Okay, so people ask, well, Mark, if you go by your given name, why don't you use your family name? My family name is Boswell, okay, for anybody who's curious. And there's several reasons for that. Number one is that I opted out of the system in the early 90s, cut up my driver's license, canceled my car registration, and said goodbye to the IRS, and was doing all these things, not only for myself, but I was teaching others how to do it. And I was having weekly meetings teaching others, and that was growing and getting momentum and building, and that led to, I started sponsoring a radio show, a conservative radio show with our little group. That led to doing my own radio show called the Citizens' Rights Forum. And so I've been teaching people how to deal with the tyranny of the system and essentially opt out since the 90s. All right? And because I became, if you can imagine, like a 15-pound solid iron pipe wrench, just throwing it into the cogs of the wheels of the system as it turns, business as usual, right? That's pretty much what I was doing. So they had to find a way to put me away. You can read about that story and how I criminally impersonated myself. And again, to this day, it's a joke in Colorado. It's like, oh my gosh, there's Mark. Hide the children. Get him inside. He's likely to impersonate himself again, right in public. And it's really hilarious. And the thing we have to understand, we can have fun with all of this stuff. But the number one thing that we get controlled by the system, we get controlled by fear, right? Well, if you don't fill out this form, you're going to end up in jail. If you don't do this right, if you don't conform, if you don't submit, you could go to jail. And we're controlled by that. We're controlled by fear. And most of us have not been to jail. And so it's fear of the unknown, right? That's usually what we have fear of, the unknown. So for that reason alone, I would highly recommend for you to advance in your freedom quotient, as I call it. After this conference, everybody should find some reason to go to jail. Get rid of that fear. I'll tell you, jail has some real benefits. You meet a lot of really interesting people. Oh man, the stories you get when you're in jail, and it takes you away from your life, but in some cases, life is so stressful. When I was in prison, I didn't have to worry about paying bills. I didn't have to worry about making money, keeping customers happy, none of that stuff. It was just, and it was so funny because after all my teaching in the public of knowledge, freedom knowledge, law, they give everybody a job in prison. You work in the kitchen or cleaning or maintenance or something. Well, what did they do with me? They made me the law clerk. Oh boy, was that fun. I started my own law group right there in the prison. We had meetings. Oh my gosh. And I got to get off these stories. I could use up all my time just telling fun stories. But they're in my books. Be sure to get my books because not only will you be entertained, but you're going to learn a lot. I use my own personal stories to teach what I've done. I've been pushing the envelope for quite some time. And I've learned a lot in the process, and I've paid the price that many people are not willing to pay. So you can learn from my experience, not have to pay those prices that I paid, and benefit as a result. Okay, so with all of this, I started a law club, and you wonder, well, boy, that sounds awful boring. Studying the law? My goodness gracious, who would want to do that? It's kind of like, well, here, read these insurance regulations. First reaction is that, right? But once you start learning how to read it and how to apply it The law is our freedom manual. We have freedom in the law. Why? Because the law is written in such a way to trick us. And we believe things that simply aren't true. And we get suckered into all kinds of obligations, requirements, filing documents, paying fines, fees, forms, all this kind of thing, when it's not required. It's not required in the least if you understand the law. So once you can see the benefits of how that can impact your life, to me, law just became just fascinating. And I spent years in the Supreme Court Law Library in downtown Denver, the university, reading through, doing studying and research, learning from other people's research, really more than what I was doing myself, but I wanted to confirm a lot of it. But the law can be absolutely fascinating. And more than that, it's not entertainment. It can be your key to freedom. I'm going to give you some examples. Now, I'm here scheduled to talk about living free as a PT. Okay? Is there anybody here who's not familiar with that concept? Be honest. PT? Okay. What's a PT? PT stands for many things. It's an acronym for many things. Prior taxpayer, previous taxpayer, permanent tourist, prepared thoroughly, permanent traveler, a lot of things. The idea is, the concept is real simple. The concept is such that wherever you are, even if you're in your own backyard, you appear as though you're from somewhere else. Now think about it. Well, why would someone want to do that? Think about it. Whenever you're invited to someone's house, you're the guest, what do? They give you the most comfortable seat. They offer you drinks and nice prepared snacks and food, and they give you attention. You know, as a guest, you're treated pretty well. And it's the same thing when you're a guest in another country. The local compelled performance statutes that apply to the locals don't always apply to you as a visitor. Right? So, for example, if you live in the United States and you're showing up in the Bahamas, you don't have to pay income taxes there or, submit to the compelled performance statutes that they have. There's a lot of benefits. So really, the PT lifestyle, it's a form of camouflage. Let me give you some examples. I moved out of the States in '99. One reason I was concerned about Y2K, and I figured, well, if I go to Costa Rica, I can at least always, if things melt down, I can always, get a mango or a banana or a coconut somewhere and survive, right? So I moved to Costa Rica, got a driver's license there, went back to visit. Both me, I was married at the time, my wife, we both got pulled over at different times in a rental car for speeding. Driving through some sleepy little place, not much activity, not much traffic, just kind of cruising through. Whoops, you're speeding. Cop pulls you over. Can I see your papers? Oh, you're from Costa Rica. Yeah. Oh, this car is registered to a rental agency. Oh, okay, well, let me, wish you a happy visit. And you were driving a little bit fast, so please, next time you come through, just slow down a little bit, okay? That's how it works. Why does it work that way? It works that way because you're not considered one of theirs. You're not a local resident. And this is where the law comes in. Understanding definitions, it's fascinating. Let's look at the word resident. Break it down. Resident, res. The root of the word is res. Well, that's Latin for the thing. Some of you had a meal ticket last night. Res, the meat of the matter. All right? Ident. Ident is a Latin root for identification. Identified. So a resident is the thing identified as what? As one of theirs, belonging to the corporation, subject to those statutes. That's how they get you. Jurisdiction is everything. How do they get jurisdiction? Well, what's your address? Where do you live? Are you a resident? Where do you work? Are you employed? Are you engaged in commerce? That's how they get their hooks into you. All right? Because you are then a beneficiary of the corporate government, and therefore, for receiving those benefits, you have a return obligation, and you're subject to the corporate rules and regulations, which are the statutes. Okay? So if they cannot identify you as, there's two things, a resident or a resident doing business in the state of. Okay? And you have to understand, the state of Kentucky is a completely different animal than Kentucky State. One is corporate, commercial, the other is de jure, at law. Two separate entities. And so we have to understand, where do we stand on that scale? Are you on the corporate side, or are you on the de jure, at law side? Okay? That's how they get their hooks into you. I remember standing in front of a judge one time in court, and she was trying to establish jurisdiction. And I was like, well, Mark, where do you live? Do you have what's your residence? And I asked, well, do you mean like permanent residence? Yeah, permanent residence. Okay, well, think about it now. The last place that you lived, house, apartment, wherever you lived, was that permanent? No, you moved. The place before that, was that permanent? No. Maybe you're in the golden years of your life and you've decided where you are is where you're going to die. Okay? This is the last place I'm going to be. Are you going to be in that house forever? No. We don't have a permanent address. Such a thing doesn't exist. Right? And this is how they trick us with words, definitions. It's really fascinating. So here's how it went. So Mark, where do you live? What's your residence? I go, oh, you mean permanent residence? I go, no, I don't have a permanent residence. Oh, really? Well, where do you live? And I said, well, I'm living now, and I'm here now, so I guess I'm living here. And I know that sounds like being a smart aleck, but it's the truth, isn't it? Well, where do you maintain your housekeeping? Where do you sleep at night? And personally, I'm a follower of Jesus, and he gave us domain over the entire earth, right? And that being the case, I'm just a sojourning pilgrim. I keep my housekeeping, wherever I hang my hat for the night. I don't have a permanent residence. So she took a different tack. Okay, so then where do you work? Are you employed? And see, that's another way they get us. They get us into commercial activity. That's the only way they can regulate us, with commercial activity. All right? And so my response was, well, I don't work. I work, but I'm not employed. Is that what you mean? Am I employed? Where am I employed? And she says, yes. She wants me to say, well, I'm in the warehouse down at Home Depot, or working for a corporation getting corporate benefits, right? And I wasn't going there. So, I'm sorry, I'm not employed. I'm not unemployed. I'm not employable, because that's not what I do. I'm not engaged in commerce. Can't regulate me. Sorry. So what'd she say? She says, well, Mark, I think you're free to go. We've had enough for today. And to make sure I got the hell out of that courtroom so no one else could catch on to anything I had to say, she says, Mr. Bailiff, would you escort Mark to the hallway, please? So that's the power you can have in your hand with just a little bit of knowledge of that boring old law, right? So PT, Wherever you are, you appear as though you're from somewhere else. Traffic stops, I explained how that works. You know, if you don't have a contract with the local state, you're not a resident doing business in the state, you're not subject. All right? Had a similar example. I had an office in Panama, which is where I live right now, and had some employees working there. And one of my employees, I found out, was spying on me, turning important information over to an avowed arch enemy who was intent on destroying me. Happened to be my soon-to-be ex-wife at the time. So when I found this out, I said, okay, well, your loyalty obviously is not with me, so there's no reason for you to be here. You've got 10 minutes to pack your things, get the hell out of here. And I'll watch you every step of the way. Don't trust you anymore. And so, okay, she did. Came back later, and you have to be careful if you have any kind of business in the Latin countries because employees know how to game the system, know how to game their employers. Because when you fire somebody, you've got severance pay, you've got unpaid vacation pay, you've got a long list of things you've got to pay. It's much easier to hire someone than to get rid of them. And they can be vindictive, and they use the system. They know how to work the system. So she came back and says, well, you owe me this obscene amount of money. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay it. You don't deserve it. And she says, well, then I'm going to have to, take it to the Ministerio de Trabajo and start legal proceedings. I said, oh, okay, very good. I said, well, you might want to take a look at the employment contract that we signed when you first came on, which was with a Costa Rican company. It's not a Panamanian company. So if you want to go to Costa Rica, convince the courts to hear a case from a Panamanian for activity that wasn't even in Costa Rica, feel free. That's the end of that story, right? Done. So using different jurisdictions can be extremely advantageous. But for those of us who are beginners to the concept, there is what is known as the five-flag theory. And it's not a theory, the five-flag plan, okay? And the idea is to plant different flags in different jurisdictions. So let's say you have a U.S. passport, all right? That's your citizenship. And like I did, I went to Costa Rica. I got residency there. Got all the documents and everything, so whenever I went back to the States, I just showed that. Whenever I'm in Costa Rica, I show my U.S. passport. So no matter where I am, I appear like I'm a foreigner, right? So you got the citizenship flag you plant in your home country, residency flag you plant in a second country. Then you might want to start a business. And it's always advisable not to have a business operating in the same country where you live. Because you all know we live in a litigious society. You don't have to do anything wrong to get attacked legally. All right? So keep the peace at home. Set your business up in another country. The banking, for the same reason, in a fourth country. And maybe you like to spend your time in your playgrounds scuba diving in Belize, in a fifth country. So you plant your flags such that wherever you are, you appear like you're from somewhere else. Okay? You get the visitor's red carpet treatment. Okay? Getting short on time already. There's so much I wanted to cover. Let's talk about taxes. Taxes are fascinating. I'm an American, so I've done a lot of studying on the IRS. For those of you that are from other countries, don't worry because the same principles apply worldwide. All right? These corporate entities called governments, they trick us to step off of the land where common law rules, universal law, God's law, and we step onto their ship, which operates under the law of the flag. So when you claim that flag, you're subject to whatever the captain of that ship orders, or the rules of that ship. All right? And so we are operating in Admiralty Maritime jurisdiction. And in one of my videos, I show this, an aerial view of the federal building in Miami. And you'll see, if you see the video, it is a ship. It's in the shape of a ship. Unmistakable, deliberate, couldn't be accidental, no way. All right, so I'm very happy to stand here in public, being recorded, saying I am a previous taxpayer. I haven't paid a dime in income tax since 1994, and I will never again. I will die. I wrote a book. I got a burr under my saddle, and I wrote a book in 1 week, How I Beat Satan and the IRS. They're a team, right? Okay. It's a very easy read. It's a fun read, but there's like 14 chapters, and out of the 14, 12 are different ways you can stay compliant with the law and be free. Okay? Let me give you an example. Okay? Several examples. First of all, definitions. I know the definition of income. Most of us say, well, if we make money, that's income. We have to pay taxes on that. No, you don't understand the definitions. Income is the gain above the fair market value which was exchanged for any good or service. Now, when you exchange your services for compensation, that's fair market value. You've not gained anything because you had to extend your services, your blood, sweat, tears, knowledge, education, experience. And that all came at a price. So your labor is value you exchanged for compensation. That's not income. So if you don't have income, in that respect, you don't have to file anything. You don't. Only taxpayers have to file income taxes. What's a taxpayer? A taxpayer is someone who has a taxable income, who is a U.S. citizen, would then be required to file. Now, if you have a lot of investment income, comes in your name, that would be considered income. And if you had to pay taxes on that, shame on you, because all you have to do is restructure your affairs so that you're not doing anything in your name. And that's partly what we do. Let me share with you what I have in one chapter called Fun and Fraud with Definitions. Okay? And again, this is the same globally. You just have to find it in your own local codification. Section 7701 of Title 26, which is the Internal Revenue Code. All right? Paragraph A, Subtitle 9, the definition, United States. The term United States, when used in a geographic sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. Now, in law, whenever you see the term includes, that means at the exclusion of everything else. It doesn't mean, well, it includes this and it could also include other things. No. If something includes A, that excludes B through Z. Okay? So, United States includes only the states and the District of Columbia. Next, definition, number 10, state. All right, so what's a state? The term state shall be construed to include the District of Columbia. So what are they saying? Let's go back to the previous definition with this definition in mind. So what they're saying is the term United States is only the District of Columbia and the District of Columbia. See how that works? All right, moving on. Trade or business. Anybody effectively connected with a trade or business in the United States, i.e. District of Columbia, is subject to Subtitle A income tax. Okay? The term trade or business includes, at the exclusion of everything else, the performance of functions of a public office. Is anybody here engaged in public office in Washington, D.C.? Doesn't look like it. Well, the good news for you is you're not required to file. All right? So then you must be considered a foreign estate or trust. Okay? You're managing your estate. That's what you do. Your life is your estate. The terms foreign estate or trust mean as an estate or trust, the income of which, from sources without the United States, i.e., the several states or abroad, which is not effectively connected with the conduct of trade or business, public office in Washington, D.C., within the United States, is not includable in gross income under Subtitle A. So it says right in the law, if you're not a public official operating in Washington, D.C., you're not subject to Subtitle A income taxes. Now, are you starting to have a little bit of interest in understanding the law? Huh? We've been hoodwinked. All right, we don't know what's in the law. And so we get suckered in through what? Fear and intimidation. And I'm out of time. I'm only halfway through my notes. Let me just say, I put 3 books out. This is my first one. It took me 20 years to put it all together. This is an encyclopedia of knowledge that you would want to have to explain so many things, not only for yourself, you probably understand many of them already, but for your family to leave, as an inheritance. How I Beat Satan in the IRS, we talked about 60 pages, a lot of white space, easy to read, fun, and just drives a hammer through the heart of the IRS. And my most recent one is Living Free as a PT. In fact, Jeff invited me to speak here in September. I thought, I need to write a book about what I'm going to be talking about. And so many of the things I didn't get to today, you'll find in the book. All right? It's my life stories, fun stories, adventures around the world. And in each story, aside from hopefully being a little bit entertaining, you will learn a very important lesson from that. Okay? I wanted to get in and talk about banking and finance. This is just an incredible fraud being perpetrated on all of us, and I'd love to get into that, but I'm out of time. Let me just leave you with the idea that we're all here to be free. You feel the electricity, the energy, the spirit. I feel the spirit of unification just kind of hovering over us. And we can change the world. We were born to be free, but we can't be free when we're enslaved by the shackles that keep us down with these fraudulent compelled performance statutes and requirements. Okay? God created us in His likeness and image. And one of the likenesses is that He is the master creator. And He gave us the ability to create. And that's why I love seeing all these presentations and talking to each one of you. You've all got your own creative ideas and you're involved in projects and doing things. Think of the synergy that we can create to move ourselves into that space in life where we are fulfilling our divine destiny that we were created for. To be creative and be free. God bless you.